In 170 AD, the Roman governor of Libya, Publius Flavius Capito, received an unusual report from a patrol deep in the Sahara. A vast stone gate, half buried in sand, unlike anything known to Roman engineering. What they found hidden behind it was not just a city, but a rupture in their understanding of history itself. This was not a simple discovery, but a historical anomaly, an event so profound and disruptive that it necessitated its own eradication from the annals of known history. Capito, a man of meticulous record-keeping and staunch adherence to Roman protocol, found himself confronted with an impossibility. His patrol, seasoned legionaries who had braved countless desert expeditions, returned not with tales of skirmishes or new trade routes, but with accounts of something utterly beyond the scope of their training or their worldview. They spoke of structures carved from rock that defied known geological processes, and architecture that predated any civilization Rome had ever encountered or even theorized. The reports, detailed and precise, described a monumental entryway fashioned from an unknown obsidian-like stone, reaching skyward, partially reclaimed by the relentless desert. Its sheer scale and the precision of its crafting rendered it an engineering marvel far beyond the capabilities attributed to any culture within Roman historical understanding. Capito's initial response was one of profound cognitive dissonance. How could such a thing exist? Roman cartography, while not perfect, was extensive. Their knowledge of North Africa, especially the regions bordering settled territories, was comprehensive. Yet, this report spoke of a vast, ancient metropolis, hidden beyond a gate, deep within what was believed to be an uninhabitable expanse of the Sahara. It was not merely a new ruin, it was an entire civilization that had simply disappeared, leaving behind only this impossible gateway. The implications were staggering, threatening to destabilize the very foundations upon which Roman historical and geographical understanding was built. This was not a minor correction to an existing map. It was the revelation of an entirely uncharted continent of knowledge. This discovery, as we shall explore, was deemed too dangerous, too disorienting to be allowed to persist in the collective memory of the Roman world. It was a truth that had to be unwritten, a past that had to be deliberately forgotten. The story of Capito and this gate is not just about what was found, but what was subsequently and quite ruthlessly erased. The implications were staggering, threatening to destabilize the very foundations upon which Roman historical and geographical understanding was built. This was not a minor correction to an existing map. It was the revelation of an entirely uncharted continent of knowledge. This discovery, as we shall explore, was deemed too dangerous, too disorienting, to be allowed to persist in the collective memory of the Roman world. It was a truth that had to be unwritten, a past that had to be deliberately forgotten. The story of Capito and this gate is not just about what was found, but what was subsequently and quite ruthlessly erased. Capito, a man of profound intellect and iron will, understood the gravity of the situation. To dismiss the report outright would have been intellectual cowardice, a betrayal of the Roman spirit of inquiry, however unsettling the findings. Yet, to confirm it publicly would risk social upheaval, shattering the established order with a truth too vast for the Roman mind to readily comprehend. The path chosen was one of clandestine investigation. With the emperor's reluctant blessing, a tacit acknowledgment of the burgeoning crisis, a small, highly specialized expedition was assembled. Its mission, to verify the existence of the gate and, if possible, to ascertain the nature of what lay beyond. Discretion was paramount. The official decree spoke of a geological survey, a search for elusive desert minerals, a narrative crafted to lull suspicion. The journey itself was a testament to Roman logistical prowess, yet also a grim foreshadowing of the anomalous terrain they were to encounter. Capito, with a detachment of meticulously chosen legionaries, veterans of countless desert campaigns, embarked upon the scorching expanse of the Sahara. This was not the familiar navigable desert fringing the Roman provinces, but the deep, unforgiving interior. Each day was a brutal reenactment of survival. The sun beat down with an unremitting ferocity, baking the very air they breathed. Water, carried in vast, heavy skins, became a precious commodity, its rationing a constant source of tension. The landscape offered no respite. Endless dunes, shifting like monstrous golden tides, swallowed their tracks as quickly as they were made. The wind, a hot, abrasive breath, scoured their faces, eroding not just their skin, but their resolve. As they pressed eastward, deeper into this vast, inhospitable wilderness, the fear among the legionaries grew, manifesting not as panic, but as a chilling, insidious skepticism. Whispers began to circulate, hushed conversations around flickering campfires. The men, hardened by years of war, found themselves battling not just the elements, but a creeping sense of the abnormal. The reported location was beyond any known oasis, any Roman map. It was a wilderness so profound, so untouched, that it seemed to mock their very presence. Days bled into weeks. The meticulous routines of Roman discipline, usually a bulwark against despair, began to fray. The stark, unchanging vista of sand and rock, broken only by mirages that taunted them with false promises of water and shade, began to wear on their psyches. The strangeness escalated subtly at first. The very sand beneath their feet seemed to change, developing an unusually dark, almost metallic sheen in places, a patina of ages that spoke of geological processes unknown to Roman science. The air itself grew heavier, charged with an inexplicable stillness that pressed in on them, muffling sound, distorting perspective. The stars, usually a comforting constant in the desert night, appeared too numerous, too bright, their constellations subtly, disturbingly misaligned, as if viewed through a different atmospheric filter entirely. It was not just the physical hardships, the relentless sun and thirst, that began to break the men. It was the encroaching sense that the natural world itself was subtly distorting, bending to an esoteric, unfathomable will. This was not the Sahara they knew, but something far older, far stranger, a landscape pregnant with untold secrets. The journey, which mirrored the agonizing, futile search for water in tales like The Last Well Digger in Tennessee, was transforming from an expedition of discovery into a harrowing odyssey through the very fabric of their reality, chipping away at their Roman certainty, leaving them vulnerable to whatever anomalous truth awaited them. And then, in the stark, blinding glare of the early morning sun, it appeared. Not a mirage, nor a fleeting optical illusion born of heat and exhaustion, but a colossal, undeniable reality. A gate, unfathomably ancient and impossibly vast, half buried in the shifting sands, its upper reaches clawing at the impossibly brilliant sky. It was a structure that defied all known engineering, all Roman calculus of force and material. Standing perhaps 500 feet in height, though its full extent beneath the sand was impossible to gauge, it dwarfed the surrounding dunes like a mountain dwarfs a pebble. The material itself was the first anomaly, a dark, obsidian-like substance that drank the light rather than reflecting it, yet somehow possessed a subtle, metallic sheen. It was utterly smooth, seamless, without a single visible join or seam, as if carved from a single, impossibly dense monolith. The legionaries, hardened men accustomed to the grandest architecture of their empire, stared up at it in a stunned silence that spoke volumes of their cognitive dissonance. This was not just a large edifice. It was an artifact on a scale that rendered human endeavor trivial, a relic that hummed with a silent, unseen energy. Then came the second, more profound shock. The carvings. They were not etched, not sculpted, but appeared to be an integral part of the gate's very molecular structure, flowing across its surface in intricate, impossible geometries. These were not the heroic figures of Roman triumphs, nor the stylized deities of Egyptian or Mesopotamian pantheons. These were alien forms, sinuous and organic, yet utterly unlike any known flora or fauna. They twisted and intertwined in patterns that seemed to shift and reform in the periphery of vision, defying logical interpretation. Some sections depicted what looked like colossal, star-faring vessels, not of wood and sail, but of gleaming, impossible alloys, suspended above planets with multiple moons. Others showed humanoid figures, tall and slender, with elongated limbs and heads, engaged in ritualistic movements around what appeared to be swirling vortexes of energy. There were symbols, too, unlike any alphabet or ideogram known to antiquity. They were sharp, angular, almost crystalline in their precision, yet pulsed with an undeniable, unsettling narrative. These were not symbols to be read, but to be felt, to be intuited, sending a shiver of primeval dread through the beholder. They spoke of distances cosmic in scope, of a past so unimaginably remote that it made the very concept of Roman history seem but a fleeting shadow. The very scale and intricacy of these glyphs suggested a level of technological and artistic mastery that was simply unfathomable to the Roman mind. It was not just an inexplicable ruin. It was a testament to an intelligence and perhaps a lineage utterly distinct from humanity's, a silent declaration encoded in stone, or whatever material this truly was, that revealed a universe far more complex and terrifying than Roman philosophy or science could ever apprehend. But it was not these fantastical depictions, arresting though they were, that initially rendered Capito and his legionaries utterly speechless. It was the very entrance itself. The monumental gateway, seamlessly integrated into the towering cliffs, was not carved stone in the conventional sense. It lacked the reassuring chisel marks of human endeavor. Instead, it appeared to be a single monolithic construct, smoothed and polished to an unnatural degree, reflecting the harsh desert sun with an eerie, almost metallic sheen. The sheer scale was overwhelming, dwarfing even the grandest triumphal arches of Rome. As they stepped across the threshold, a perceptible shift in the ambient temperature and atmospheric pressure was noted, a subtle yet profound disjunction from the scorching desert air they had just left. The air within was cool, dry, and resonated with a peculiar, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to originate from the very fabric of the structure itself. Unlike typical ancient structures that relied on torches or natural light, the interior was bathed in a soft, diffused luminescence that emanated from no discernible source. It was as if the walls themselves glowed, casting no shadows, creating an environment of ethereal clarity that defied all logic and known architectural principles. The chambers they entered were vast, their ceilings soaring to impossible heights, supported by columns whose forms mirrored the angular precision of the enigmatic glyphs outside. These columns were not quarried rock. They possessed a density, a dark, lustrous quality that was utterly alien. A chilling cold seeped into their fingertips, a sensation not of stone, but of something far older, far more enduring, possessing a patina of ages that transcended geological epochs. The architectural style, if it could even be termed as such, was a stark departure from any known human civilization, ancient or contemporary. It was geometric, abstract, and yet possessed an organic fluidity, as if the entire structure had been grown rather than built, sculpted by forces utterly beyond human comprehension. The Romans, for all their engineering prowess and architectural flair, were men of their time, operating within the predictable confines of masonry, timber, and mortar. The materials before them, however, defied categorization. They were neither stone, nor metal, nor wood, yet possessed the strength of iron and the smoothness of polished onyx. It was a cognitive dissonance of the highest order. Their minds, accustomed to the logical progression of cause and effect, of labor and material, struggled to reconcile what their eyes beheld with any known reality. This was not merely an advanced civilization. This was an entirely different paradigm of existence. Here, in the heart of the Sahara, they had stumbled not just upon a city carved from rock, as the initial reports might have suggested, but upon something far more profound, verging on the cosmic. It was akin to a farmer in Kentucky falling through his barn floor, only to find himself in a perfectly preserved, technologically advanced metropolis predating Earth's very formation. The sheer antiquity of the place was palpable, a silent, weighty presence that pressed down upon them, hinting at timelines so vast as to render human history a fleeting flicker in comparison. It was a rupture in time, a tangible manifestation of a past so impossibly distant that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of their understanding of the world. The silence of the vast chambers, punctuated only by the distant, inexplicable hum, amplified this sense of profound otherness. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a narrative of forgotten eons. A rupture in time, a tangible manifestation of a past so impossibly distant that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of their understanding of the world. The silence of the vast chambers, punctuated only by the distant, inexplicable hum, amplified this sense of profound otherness. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a narrative of forgotten eons. For Capito, the task was clear, yet unfathomable, to document, to impose Roman order, however futile, upon this sprawling, alien testament to antiquity. He dispatched scribes and engineers, men trained in precision and empirical observation, to sketch, to measure, to record every anomalous detail. They returned, not with comprehensive surveys, but with increasingly desperate reports, their accounts laced with a creeping dread. The architecture defied known principles of construction. The materials, though seemingly stone, possessed properties unknown to Roman metallurgy or masonry. Inscriptions, when found, were in no recognizable tongue, yet resonated with an unsettling complexity that suggested more than mere symbols. Capito himself, a man of rational temperament and considerable intellect, found his convictions eroding with each new, inexplicable discovery. He saw firsthand the subtle, yet profound, ways in which the environment within the structure subtly altered magnetic readings, or subtly shifted the very perception of time. It was not just a marvel, it was a fundamental challenge to the very axioms of their world. His dispatches to Rome, initially formal and precise, gradually became tinged with an almost philosophical despair, a desperate appeal to the emperor to understand the unprecedented nature of what had been unearthed. He spoke of an anterior civilization, not just older, but fundamentally different, operating under laws of physics and consciousness perhaps entirely divergent from their own. Such revelations, delivered to the imperial court, were met not with intellectual curiosity, but with abject horror. The Roman elite, custodians of an ordered universe, founders of history as they knew it, recognized the existential threat inherent in Capito's findings. This was not a new province to conquer, nor a tribal cult to suppress. This was a narrative that could shatter the very myth of Roman supremacy, indeed, the very foundation of human progress as they conceived it. The immediate, decisive imperial reaction was swift and brutal. An edict, passed with unprecedented haste, mandated the abandonment of the entire expedition. All records, every single scroll and tablet, every hastily drawn map and frantic inscription, were to be collected and utterly obliterated. The order was absolute: burn the evidence, silence the witnesses, and, most critically, erase the memory of what lay beneath the desert sands. Capito himself, his career irrevocably tarnished, was recalled to Rome, subjected to a rigorous and terrifying interrogation under the guise of an assessment of his mental fortitude. There was no public trial. Such information was too volatile, too dangerous to be allowed to merely exist outside sanctioned narratives. His final testimony, a bewildered plea for intellectual honesty, was recorded, only to be buried forever within the deepest, most secure vaults of the imperial archive, marked unfit for public consumption. The fear was palpable among the patrician class, a fear not of an invading army, but of an idea, a concept so potent it could unravel generations of carefully constructed history, social order, and spiritual belief. The discovery spoke of a time before Rome, before even the myths that predicated Rome, a time when beings of unknown origin possessed knowledge and power that dwarfed their own. It suggested that humanity was not the zenith of creation, but perhaps merely a fleeting, late-stage anomaly in a much vaster, far more ancient saga. This was not merely the suppression of uncomfortable facts. It was a deliberate, total eradication of alternative history, a desperate act to defend the fragile edifice of their civilization from the corrosive truth of the unfathomable. It echoed, in its chilling efficiency, the chilling precedent of narratives that are deemed too disruptive, too challenging to the established order, much like whispered tales from later eras of scientists who spoke one sentence about anomalous findings, only for their words to vanish from every official report, every sanctioned historical record. The weight of this forbidden knowledge, this truth too profound for the human mind to bear, was simply too much. Yet the desert, in its timeless indifference, retains whispers. A single, almost illegible fragment, discovered amidst the vast papyri of Oxyrhynchus, speaks not of a Roman governor, but of a wandering scholar of Syrian descent in the late 2nd century A.D., who, in an unspecified arid dominion beyond the customary routes, encountered structures of unwrought stone, of proportions not of this earth, guarded by automatons of polished obsidian. The scholar's subsequent writings, deemed heretical even by the most esoteric Gnostic sects, hint at glyphs too complex for human interpretation, etched into a material described as cold to the touch, yet emanating a subtle hum, located within a subterranean complex beneath these impossible leviathans. This obscure passage, dismissed by most classicists as poetic allegory or outright madness, is the lone flickering candle in the profound darkness of erasure. The tribes of the outer Sahara, those who still navigate by constellations unknown to the cartographers of Rome, tell tales passed down through millennia of sky-fallen ones who once ruled the great inland sea, a memory of a time when the Sahara blossomed green. Their lore speaks of cities not built, but grown from the earth, and of guardians who vanished with the drying of the world, leaving behind silent, impenetrable sentinels. These oral traditions, often dismissed as primitive fantasy, echo the startling descriptions from that lone papyrus. It is not just a coincidence, it is a resonance, a discordant harmony across the vast chasms of forgotten time. What does this tell us? It tells us that history, as we know it, is a tapestry woven with threads carefully selected, while countless others lie severed, discarded, and buried. It suggests that our intellectual ancestors, faced with a cognitive dissonance too profound to integrate, chose to excise. They did not simply forget, they actively unlearned. The Roman governor's expedition, shrouded in state-sanctioned oblivion, stands as a stark testament to the uncomfortable truth that lies are often propagated not by commission, but by systematic omission. The implications are staggering. If such advanced, non-human civilizations existed in antiquity, if their presence was deemed so disruptive that an empire went to such immense lengths to erase it, what else has been expunged? What other truths, too inconvenient, too challenging, too humbling, lie beneath the desert sands, or within the deepest oceanic trenches, or in the forgotten annals of prehistory? The knowledge lost with that suppression is not merely academic. It fundamentally alters our perception of humanity's place in the cosmic order, rendering our supposed primacy a recent, perhaps tenuous presumption. It asks us to confront the possibility that we are not the protagonists of a grand linear narrative, but rather late arrivals to a long-forgotten drama, a mere footnote in a saga whose opening chapters were written by hands that were not, perhaps, entirely human. This is the melancholic weight of lost knowledge, the quiet, persistent echo of what could have been and what irrevocably is not. The desert, in its silent immensity, harbors not just sand and rock, but the profound, unsettling quietude of forgotten epochs, a testament to the fact that oblivion can be as deliberately constructed as any monument. If you find these buried histories as compelling as we do, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's next.